love listeners. It's Andres Lorente at the Popcorn Counter, and I see James Rosica right over there, and he's holding something. James, what are you holding? What is that? Is that a book? I can't tell. You've got pictures, but you've got words?
It's a blooming enormous book. Look at the size of this. So I told you we were watching The Killer last week. Which Killer? The Fincher feature, The Killer.
The Fincher feature, yeah.
So I borrowed the book from the library, but look how big it is.
You said it was a tome.
It's enormous. It's like I say it's like a telephone directory, but young people these days don't know what a telephone directory is.
No idea. I haven't seen one in decades. No.
Yeah, actually, they still don't make them. Luckily, if they run out of seats at the screening, I can sit on this book. It is enormous. Do you ever read graphic novels? Is it a thing for you?
Not really. The one graphic novel I remember reading was the biography of Che Guevara in a graphic novel. That I loved.
Whoa!
And I think I also read maybe a Karl Marx graphic novel too.
Your graphic novels are very highbrow.
Yeah, I've looked at Mouse. That's a graphic novel, no?
Okay, right.
It's a classic,
yeah.
right? So yeah, a couple. I mean, I work. I teach. I'm in a public high school. We've got lots of graphic novels now in our library, and that's something that's kind of a new movement, I think, in the last 15 or 20 years. Started to see a lot of graphic novels for the young people. And I want to be cynical a little bit because they can't read, so they need pictures to spell everything out for them. But I also think of so much storyboarding in film as being graphic novels, and I think that's maybe why people love them for film source material. What say you?
I guess that's a lot of what you buy when you buy a graphic novel, isn't it? That it's basically it feels like it's been storyboarded for you.
Yeah, exactly.
Already. I'm not sure what I think about the name graphic novel. It feels like a little bit of a misnomer. I mean, sometimes they are graphic. I mean, if you look at The Killer, there is some graphic violence there within the pages, but I feel like it's. There is a video game equivalent of a graphic novel, which is called a visual novel, which is a game where there's not very much interactivity, and basically you're sort of being told a story, and you might have a little degree of agency. You might be able to choose to go into this room or to that room, but basically you're sort of being told a story. And I feel like, well, maybe that is a graphic novel. Yeah. This book version, maybe a pictorial novel, I was thinking maybe might be a slightly better term.
What about picture book or comic book? Does that help?
Comic book, you see. I mean, so as a boy, I read 2000 AD, which is like Britain's top sort of science fiction action comic at the time. And I feel like that probably still gets published. Maybe. I don't know. Probably it doesn't, actually. I don't know whether that kind of comic scene is looked down on by people who do graphic novels. Do people feel like a graphic novel it's a higher form than a comic?
Yeah, we're not allowed to call them comic books. That's why I was sort of taking a chance there with you.
Yeah, but I feel I think the people who write and enjoy comics should hold their heads high. Nothing wrong with that.
No, not at all.
I did read Watchmen. The film version of Watchmen, Zack Snyder, probably neither of our favourite director. Yeah. He did make a big point of transposing cartoon panels directly onto the screen.
Oh, really? Okay.
So there are occasions when a graphic novel lends itself to being put straight up on the screen with as little intervention as possible. But if you look at pages from The Killer, it starts out with a hit on a guy in a French apartment, but I see very little of Fincher's film on the pages of this book.
Interesting.
It takes the idea, and that's pretty much it. It could have been based on an ordinary novel, and I think it would have taken about as much as it has from the graphic novel.
Okay.
And interestingly, although you say, well, kids don't like to read, they can't have the story unless it's got the pictures.
Yeah.
There's an awful lot of words in The Killer. It's very, very wordy. So much so that there are panels which are just crowded with words with hardly enough space for the characters to appear.
Right. Okay.
So it does make you wonder whether the story really necessarily lends itself to this format. I think it would be just as successful as a book with no pictures at all. So using a graphic novel as source material I don't know whether it's necessarily as easy a transfer to film as it looks.
So that could be a myth that it's actually ripe for adaptation.
Maybe it is.
For me, yeah, I guess one of my concerns is this. When I'm reading a book without pictures, I really have to use my imagination a lot more. So I'm actually trying to, actively imagine what I'm supposed to see, or, trying to see the characters and see the settings. Whereas I think there's just this spoon feeding kind of element of, oh, here's what it looks like, and then here are the words that you need to get a bit more characterization or a bit more of the story. So I just worry about that, and I think we need more imagination in filmmaking. It's like we can't just see the same images again and again. I think that's when you start to see this redundancy, and in some of the younger filmmakers seem to be attracted to these images that they don't seem very original to me anymore.
Yep. I play a daily online game called Framed, I think it's called, where you get 6 stills from a film. And you have to guess what the film is. And you only score more points the fewer stills you look at. It's like a film buff's version of Wordle.
Oh, wow.
But it says that it gets its frames from this a big kind of online database of film frames. And I think the idea of the film is to advertise this database, which people can use to produce mood boards and storyboards for their own projects. And that is exactly the problem that you're talking about, isn't it? It's that new films end up just kind of cannibalizing bits of old films.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so it's like saying, well, here we're going to have a scene which looks like this scene out of Batman, and now we're going to have a scene which looks like this scene out of Baron Munchausen. And, maybe it means that you end up with films that look like generic little tidbits from lots of other films. It's like making a record using samples rather than playing an instrument. There's nothing wrong with I've got some great albums that were made using samples, but after a while, once everything has been sampled, you're kind of scratching your head a little bit looking for some original material.
Yeah, precisely.
I personally find graphic novels exhausting to read. I find it really tiring.
Oh boy!
I only managed to get through 2 volumes of The Killer here. I did manage to get all the way through Watchmen, but it took me a while. A friend of mine lent me this big kind of DC book a few years ago, and I just could not get into it. I've even bought kind of Marvel anthologies for my children, but they also find them kind of a bit too tiring and difficult to read. I personally think the pictures are better in a normal book.
Yeah.
I think when you have to imagine it yourself, I think it looks better. But maybe that's an old person talking. I don't know.
And they tend to be big. It sounds like this tome that you're carrying here tonight. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Big and heavy, and they do not lend themselves to being read on the Kindle. I did have a look on the IMDb to try and find a list of films that have been based on graphic novels, and it will surprise you to learn there are a lot. I've got my little list here. Wait a second. I don't know whether you would have seen any of these or not. So top of the list is, well, it's The Killer. It's the David Fincher film. We have both seen that. But have you seen any of these other ones? Ghost World. Did you see that?
Yes.
Young Scarlett Johansson.
It was one of the most boring films I've ever seen. I'm sorry. Yeah, it was Scarlett Johansson, though. Yeah, maybe 18, 20 years old or something like that. Was Steve Buscemi in that film, too? I feel like he was this pervy kind of older guy who was almost dating the girls or wanted to date the girls. It was,
Has Steve Buscemi ever been in a film where he wasn't a pervy older guy?
Point well taken. Good.
I can't remember anything about that film except the 2 girls wearing T-shirts, kind of sort of looking blankly out of the screen, which is like the cover of the book and the poster for the film, and my only retained image from the whole movie.
I think they walk around Los Angeles a lot. I think that's the theme of the film, which is odd because you really have to drive around Los Angeles. So maybe that was the take on that. What else?
Sin City. Did you see that?
I was about to mention that because there are a couple of Robert Rodriguez films that I really like, and then he did that one, and oof. They're like very misogynistic, very bloody and violent. Black and white for the most part, I believe.
Yeah.
Right? Unless there was blood. I think the blood was always red, but the images were black and white. Didn't like that one either. We're not doing well. This is not good. I'm not.
I remember coming out of Sin City thinking, well, I bet that film was a lot of fun to make because there seems to be an awful lot of naked women on screen. But not nearly as much fun to watch, I think. Okay, well, this is a change of direction. A History of Violence by David Cronenberg.
That's based on a graphic novel.
That is based on a graphic novel, interestingly.
Yeah. Is that Naomi Watts in that film, maybe?
Oh, she might be.
Or Maria Bello? I don't know.
I think it's Maria Bello,
okay.
yes.
And then from Lord of the Rings, our friend from Lord of the Rings.
Lord of the Rings, yeah. The Lord of the Rings guy is in it. He has to return the ring or something. But I do remember that film, being a little bit thin on story and having quite a lot of violence in it, but broadly enjoying it. Being a little bit of a departure for David Cronenberg.
It is Cronenberg, right?
Because nobody got dissected during the film.
Yeah, and then I'm confusing it a little bit with Eastern Promises, I think, which is also Cronenberg, is it not? And the same actor.
Right, okay. And it's also different from Crash as well.
Yes. But all three of those could be from graphic novels. But
graphic novels. Crash was certainly graphic. V for Vendetta, have you seen that?
Yeah. That was... There's a theme developing here. That was after the big ones, the Matrix ones, right? Same guys, or same women. At this point, the Wachowskis. Yes.
Yeah.
Didn't remember liking that one either.
Yeah.
Viggo Mortensen is the actor in this.
That's it. That's the guy with the ring. So it's okay. So there's a pattern forming. Okay, I'm going to change tack slightly. Okay,
Please.
2 Tom Cruise features: Oblivion and Edge of Tomorrow.
Didn't see either one, so I could like those. There's the potential that I would like those.
I think both of those good Tom Cruise science fiction films.
Oh, good. Okay.
Unfortunately, both of them have this slight undercurrent that they might have something to do with the themes of Scientology. So that always makes me raise a question over Tom's film choices. But if you imagine you know nothing about Scientology, those are both enjoyable sci-fi films.
Impossible now. Okay.
Okay, well, Japanese films, Ghost in the Shell is based on a graphic novel.
I believe we saw 2 versions. No, we didn't see 2 versions. We saw a version
we
of that.
saw the one version.
We talked a little bit about the other version, which also features Scarlett Johansson.
Yeah, we've come full circle.
We're making connections.
And Akira, did you ever watch that?
Akira, no. I know that one's famous, though, yeah.
It is. It's like the most famous kind of like manga anime film of all time, isn't it? I've only watched it the once, and it was very late at night, at like a midnight screening when I was at university, and so I'm pretty sure I fell asleep 2 or 3 times during Akira. That is my overwhelming memory of it. It's quite hypnotic and sleep-inducing. I don't think any other reasonable person would come away with that impression of Akira, and that's just me.
Yeah, bye.
Okay, we'll change tack again. Persepolis. Have you seen that?
I did. That one, okay. I think I liked that one. That's a really interesting telling of life in Tehran and I think leaving Iran. I liked that, and it has a very black and white. It felt very much like a drawing film. It's like an illustrated film.
Yeah, it's very simple animation, isn't it? I think based very closely on the style of the comic, of the graphic novel that it's based on. I said comic there, though. I can hear people writing in to complain already.
Oh God!
I can still clearly remember scenes of people being frightened of the religious police and arranging a party and kind of closing the curtains and sort of blacking out the windows and So that film made a real impression on me. That film is closely based on the graphic novel that it draws from.
Yeah, and that film is interesting because it really gives, as an American, we know nothing about Iran, and we know nothing about Iran before like 1978, of course. And it's just such an interesting country, just a wealth of culture and history, and it's changed a lot. So it's this little snapshot of life in Iran before the revolution. So it's actually, it feels like it's a very personal story. I think it's based on her life, and it gives us, I think it gives us information that we need, and that was a good film, Persepolis.
So that's one thumb up at least.
Yeah,
I have a few more here.
Okay,
American Splendor, that Paul Giamatti film. Did you ever see that?
Oh God.
So that appears in a double bill with Ghost World, I presume, in your mind.
It does. I mix those two together all the time. That, yes. I want to say that's Toni Collette, but it's not. It's I'll have to look that one up. Oh gosh, yes, that one. I just felt like they're two comic book or two graphic novel writers or something like that, or maybe they had comic strips, right? It's they're a couple. And they both do the same sort of job, as I recall.
I think so.
It's a biography of their lives, and they just seemed like they're introverted, as I recall. And
They're not obvious subjects for a biopic.
Yeah, not and yeah, just not super engaging people. So I think I just did not. I mean, they're played very well by the actors, but it just was not. Yeah, not very exciting to me. Harvey Pekar, I think that's the name of the. I think that's the one of the artists. Yeah. Did you see that film? Do you remember it or no?
Yeah, I did, and I remember nothing about it apart from poor Giamatti looking a bit cheesed off.
Yeah.
But maybe that was the main proportion of the film.
And I totally forgot who the actress is because I don't see the name of the actor. I thought there was another lead who was quite famous at the time, but yeah, he just not a character you'd really relate to. I think. I mean, maybe a great writer, maybe he produced a great comic book, but in terms of as a protagonist in a film. Not someone you'd want to bet a lot of money on, I don't think. But Paul Giamatti plays it very well. I get the feeling that that's how the guy was. But
who wants to watch 2 hours of that?
I didn't. I think these are the old days before streaming. I sat in a theater and watched that film against.
Yeah, I think we did too. Yeah, absolutely. Oof. Okay, I have a B team list here, which is films based on a graphic novel, which I have not seen. Oh, okay. This is going to be a bit of a quicker run through. It may turn out that you've seen some of these.
No, this is probably going to be the two of us talking about films we've not seen, which is not a good look on the Two Reel Cinema Club.
We're back on home ground now. So, right, some of the films that I have not seen that I'm now going to be forced to talk about on a podcast. Blue is the warmest colour. It is. Winner of the Palme d'Or. Apparently the first Palme d'Or winner to be based on a graphic novel, 2013. Lesbian drama, I think very dramatic. I think very emotional. I have not seen it.
Yeah.
Doesn't sound like a fun night out at the movies, but a proper achievement.
I think I've seen it and don't remember it at all.
Oh, well, maybe not as heartbreaking as I've been led to believe then.
Yeah, I'd have to see it again, I think.
Or maybe it was so traumatizing you just blotted it out of your memory.
Yeah, I know that I've seen that film, but I can't tell you anything about it. Sorry.
Well, my favourite Tom Hanks appears in Road to Perdition.
Yeah.
Where he
does. Is that Sam Mendes? And
it is Sam Mendes, isn't it? I think this is the film he made after American Beauty. I have not seen it. I think Tom Hanks is a hitman, something like that. Is that right?
Yeah, he's not the lead in that film. Not going to recommend it.
Okay, I'm starting to feel like I've got off lightly here. Cowboys and Aliens. Less said, the better.
No, haven't seen it. I think
that's funny because I would have thought that film is right up your street, but
well, it's a great title. And in hindsight, I mean, when I saw that title, I elected not to see the film. But boy, it's a good one. Cowboys and Aliens. It's good promise.
That does take great skill to set your stall out so entirely in 3 words.
Yeah.
Especially when one of them is "and."
That's what do they call it? That's a spoonful pitch, or what is it? A pitch and a spoonful, or whatever. Elevator pitch. I mean, that's just a 3-word pitch.
3 words.
Take money, make the film.
When the Wind Blows.
Nope.
So I saw a theatre production based on When the Wind Blows, but not the film. Monkey Bone, haven't seen
What's
that.
that.
Wanted, haven't seen that. Scott Pilgrim, haven't seen that. Abraham Lincoln, Vampire Hunter. I have not seen any of these films, but they are all based on graphic novels.
Okay.
The last one on my list, a little bit different, Gemma Bovary. Have you seen that?
No.
Which is like a modern reinterpretation of is it Mrs. Bovary? Emma Bovary? What's the...
Madame Bovary.
Madame Bovary, that's it. There we go.
Flaubert. That's a fantastic book, and there is an adaptation of it that I did not like, a French adaptation, not very good. But I have never heard it. Is it did you say Emma Bovary or
Emma Bovary?
No,
Gemma Bovary. Gemma Bovary.
Gemma Bovary. Nope.
Good. So this has been another excellent podcast episode of us talking about films that we haven't seen.
It's funny because my takeaway is you've said you have a hard time reading them, your children have a hard time reading them, that they don't make great source material for films. We've not liked a lot of them. We have liked a few of them. Is there a theme here? The theme here is maybe it's better to sit down and write an original story and turn that into a film with someone who can visualize your ideas that you have imagined yourself, as opposed to borrowing pictures from, which is almost like a prepackaged product for a film. I don't know.
I have 3 takeaways from this. One is there's nothing to be ashamed about with comics. If you've written a comic, call it a comic. And be proud that you've written a comic.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with comics. The second thing is, just write a novel. Words. We like words.
Yeah,
Of course we're going to like words because we're writers. But you know what? Yeah, stick to the words.
Yeah.
You can't go wrong with words. And my third takeaway is, you know what? These books, they're big. You can sit on them. So, if you're a bit short, we've got 13 people coming around for Christmas lunch next month.
Do you? Yeah, you're going to need some.
So I might hang on to this copy of The Killer. So it's just that one of my nephews could sit on it for Christmas lunch, I think.
It almost implies that you can read it with your arse, which is not a good takeaway either.
Yes. I mean, it depends how thick the ink is on the page, but I could give it a go. But then maybe the librarian will be cross with me when I take the book back.
Absolutely. Missing pages, missing ink.
Exactly.
I think, another takeaway might be just, there are a lot of different mediums or different ways to tell a story. And a comic book is a perfectly good way to tell a story. A graphic novel probably is a good way to tell a story. A novel is, but it doesn't make them films, I guess. And I think that was one of the problems that I had with some recent films that we watched that were based on the graphic novel is that it doesn't need chapters. It doesn't need to tell an enormous story. It just needs to tell a short story very well and using pictures, moving pictures. And I think they all are different mediums. And sometimes we're looking for source material and we grab things that aren't necessarily cinematic and try to turn them into films. And that doesn't always work. But it was good to see that a couple of them I thought were pretty good projects, and a couple of them I didn't even know that they were graphic novels previously. So
I wonder whether the ones that worked are ones which are like The Killer, where they've kind of not taken an enormous amount from the graphic side of the graphic novel.
That probably helps. Yeah.
Well, I'm looking forward to a musical next week. Things will be a little bit different.
Then we can complain about musicals. And we can talk about musicals we've never seen before.
Is there a graphic novel of West Side Story? If not, why not?
So do you have another book that I can see on?